Today we're going to be making this super cute safari painting. If you don't know what supplies you need, go take a look at the intro video on my page, but be sure to subscribe before you go so you can find your way back in here. We're just jumping in with a big paintbrush, some yellow paint, some orange paint, and a little bit of white paint, keeping it super light. And we're going to be doing a lot of streaking side to side through the very middle and middle top of this painting here, just starting to get that nice yellow hue and then adding a little bit of orange right on top of that yellow orange area we added in, and then a little bit of red at the very top of the painting. And of course this is like an over water or over desert reflection that's going to be happening later on, so we're going to be doing this same step upside down in a minute to get the reflection in the bottom. So it's this big yellow section through the middle with a little bit of orange in there, a little bit of orange above that, and a little bit of red above that. So from the bottom, it's going to be red at the bottom. And then here, just taking that same big brush, doesn't matter the size, doesn't matter the shape, just getting a lot of paint on there. So using a big one and doing these nice little streaks in our lighter sections with that red we just put on, making a little line across the bottom of that yellow, adding in a little bit more yellow if needed, just really starting to streak up the colors that we already have on this painting to get that nice warm sun feeling. So kind of jumping in here, adding a little bit more yellow, we can jump back and add a little bit more orange, just streaking it in side to side, getting those nice horizontal lines, and of course bringing some yellow down in the bottom, reflecting off of what we did at the top. So trying to do like a mirror image, trying to put yellow on the bottom half of the painting, the opposite of where it is on the top, and then a little bit more of this dark through the side and the middle of the bottom section, because that's a pretty good reflection of what's at the top up there, streaking it up just like we did at the top, and then adding our tiny little sun way off in the distance. Super hot but super far away, somehow that works, but that's okay. Just a little bit of white. This is a smaller paintbrush, making a tiny circle in the sky, and then down here where everything's reflecting off of that ground, we just do another little circle. And we can of course add some little streaks of this white through that bottom section to get that little bit of motion from the heat that's just pushing its way around. Of course, mixing in some water as needed, but all of that background is just red at the top, orange between that, and then yellow through the main part, and just streaking it back and forth to get all those different hues of colors. Take the time to get that to your happy place, and then grab a little bit of brown paint, and this is just a tiny little brush. The shape of it doesn't matter, we're just doing little teeny tiny taps for some foliage that's way far off in the distance. So that's some brown paint right here, going right across. This is going to be our horizon line, so just putting it wherever we want the separation to be between the sky and the ground. And then these little foliage things are just light little taps with some brown paint. Everything we do up top on this painting is also going to be reflected on the bottom of it, so just leaving a little gap between the foliage we just made and doing the same little taps with that same brown paint and that same paintbrush, all going right across, just doing the exact same thing, letting it reflect. It doesn't have to look identical, it's a reflection, so it's okay if it changes a little bit, but just giving it a nice little reflection of what we just did. Tapping that brown paint on there, then we're going to just use that same brush, don't even clean it out, just wipe it off, grab a little bit of black paint, and we're going to make a black line right between those two foliage areas we brought in. This is going to be the actual land that foliage is sitting on, so just some plain black paint, zigzagging it in here side to side. Again, this is really far off in the distance, and the bottom part of this line is a part of that reflection, so it doesn't have to be a perfect line or anything, just kind of putting it on there. And of course we can wiggle out on purpose underneath that line a little bit to start to get that reflection feel happening. And then we can even grab a tiny bit of brown paint, and it's going to still look black because that black is so wet. We can just smooth the bottom edge into that foliage a little bit for that reflection part, and just kind of gently press it to where that black blends into that brown. And then using that same color that's just left over on that brush, we can smooth this top line of the black just so that it's not such a harsh change. We're not changing the size or the shape of it, we're just touching barely the edge of the black on the top here to make it a little bit of a smoother blend. Then it's time to make trees. So just grabbing a very small paintbrush, one that you're comfortable with in size and shape, and making a big letter Y for our tree. This is done with just our black paint, maybe a little bit of water mixed in to help it around, and it's just a letter Y with one extra line in there just so that there's enough branches for all of the little leaves. And then these leaves are just teeny tiny taps of that paintbrush. Now the bottom of the very bottom of that Y is a little bit wider down there for the trunk, so you can add a little bit of width there. But all these trees are going to be the exact same thing. It's a letter Y with maybe a couple of extra lines at the top half of the letter Y, and then making it a little bit wider at the base, and then a bunch of little taps all the way around in like an arched, fluffy little shape at the top for those leaves. And then you can take the time to add as many extra little branches as you want to. You can even do some extra branches midway through and do some extra leaves through there. That's great. And then another tree. Anything we do up top, of course, we're going to be reflecting down at the bottom in just a minute. So this is another letter Y, and then more teeny tiny branches, and then more teeny tiny taps for those teeny tiny leaves. Your trees are looking fantastic. You're doing a great job. For the reflections, it's just that same little brush, black paint, and we're not reflecting it perfectly, we're just squiggling it down. So squiggling down, the reflection's a little bit shorter than the top half of the painting, so squiggling down, it doesn't even have to be the same height, just squiggling down a little line for the middle of it, and then a few big lines below the little lines to make a reflection of the top half of the tree. So squiggling a little line for the trunk, and then big lines for the reflection of the leaves. And we repeat that as many times as needed for as many trees as we put on there. You can do 1 tree, you can do 700 trees. You don't have to do any trees if you don't want any trees, but it's just that little brush, black paint, a little bit of water mixed in with that black paint, and we do a little squiggle down for the trunk, and then a bigger squiggle below the little line squiggle for the leaves up at the top with all those branches. Keeping in mind, since these are such little bitty strokes that we're making, if your paint's getting hard to move around, adding a little bit more water will be friendly to your painting. Just make sure you don't add too much water and start dripping all over the place. So last one here, little squiggle for the trunk coming down, doing those side to side lines, big squiggles at the bottom for the leaves and for the branches. And that is all you have to do today. You've done an amazing job. Your safari painting looks so good. I am so proud of you. Don't forget to subscribe and come back soon.